Not all wrongs are forgivable, not because we're incapable of forgiveness, but because some betrayals fracture something sacred, our sense of safety, our dignity, our self-respect. There are betrayals that, when repeated or left unacknowledged, don't just cause pain, they change who we are. And there are three in particular that we should never, ever excuse away. Trust isn't just built on honesty, it is honesty. It's the quiet agreement we make with someone when we let them into our inner world. It says, I believe you will be true to your word. And when you can't be, you'll have the courage to be real with me about it. But when deception becomes a pattern, when lies replace truth and silence replaces transparency, it isn't just a breach of trust. It's an assault on the emotional safety that intimacy depends. Let's be real here. Everyone slips. Everyone tells a lie at some point, a single mistake, a moment of fear or avoidance. That's human. But what we're talking about here is different. Repeated deception is not a mistake, it's a choice. It's the deliberate decision to hide, to manipulate, or to withhold again and again in a way that protects the liar at the expense of the relationship. And that's a form of emotional gaslighting. When you start to question your memory, doubt your intuition, or feel crazy for sensing that something's off, it's usually not just your imagination. That's the consequence of being in a relationship where deception has become normalized. It's not just about being lied to, it's about how the lie makes you betray yourself. You learn to silence your gut, to second guess your instincts, to smile through confusion. That's what repeated lying does. It doesn't just destroy the relationship with the other person, it begins to corrode the one you have with yourself. And here's what's especially damaging. Deception is rarely just about words. It shows up in the stories people don't tell, the texts they delete, the intentions they hide, the double lives they quietly live. Every omission, every half-truth, every it's not a big deal chips away at your sense of stability, and eventually you find yourself in a relationship built on shifting sand. No matter how much love you pour in, nothing feels solid anymore. Some people will tell you to forgive and move on, but how do you forgive someone who refuses to be honest about the harm they caused? How do you rebuild with someone who keeps hiding the bricks? Forgiveness can only exist where there is accountability, and trust can only be rebuilt where truth is valued more than comfort. If someone continues to lie even after the damage is named, if they dodge, deflect, or demand instant forgiveness without doing the hard work to rebuild, that's not a relationship, that's a performance. So if you're in a relationship where repeated deception is present, let me say this clearly, you are not too sensitive, you are not overreacting, you are responding to a violation. You have every right to require truth. You have every right to walk away when someone shows you again and again that they care more about controlling your perception than earning your trust. Because love without honesty is just manipulation in disguise, and you deserve better than that. There's a kind of betrayal that doesn't leave bruises or break plates. It doesn't scream or storm out. Instead, it's quiet, invisible to the outside world, and yet it can feel like the loudest kind of abandonment you'll ever experience. Emotional abandonment happens when someone you deeply rely on, someone who claims to love you, turns away, checks out, or shuts down when you need them the most. Not in the small, everyday ways, but in those pivotal, defining moments when your world feels like it's unraveling. Maybe you've been there. You're standing in the aftermath of loss, grief, illness, job loss, miscarriage, trauma, and you reach out not just for help, but for presence, for comfort, for someone to say, I see you, I'm here. We'll walk through this together. But instead, you're met with silence, detachment, maybe even annoyance. They become distant, cold, they become cold, they become cold, they become coated with ice, coated with water, frozen over. To silence, come the weight of it all, alone. Let's be clear. This isn't about needing someone to fix your problems. This isn't about demanding perfection or constant cheerleading. This is about the kind of sacred presence we're supposed to offer the people we love when the sky is falling. Because relationships, real ones, are supposed to be shelters, not storms. When a partner, friend, or family member emotionally abandons you in your most vulnerable moments, it delivers a very specific message. Your pain is too much for me. And over time, that message becomes internalized. You start to believe that your emotions are a burden, that your needs are too big, that you're too much. And so you start to shrink. You stop reaching out. You learn to suffer in silence. And the saddest part, you begin to think that's normal. But it's not. It is not normal to cry in the next room while the person you love watches TV and pretends they don't hear you. It is not normal to beg for emotional connection and be told you're dramatic or needy. It is not normal to go through a crisis, death, depression, trauma, and feel more alone with your partner than without them. Emotional abandonment cuts deep because it touches the most primal part of us, our need to feel safe, held, and witnessed. We are wired for connection. When we're in pain, our nervous systems search for signs of co-regulation. Someone who can say, with or without words, you don't have to go through this alone. When that doesn't happen, when the person you promised to be there turns away, it registers as danger. It's a form of relational neglect. And yet, it's the easiest kind of betrayal to dismiss. Why? Because it doesn't leave obvious evidence. There's no fight to point to, no affair to expose, no cruel words to replay. Just 1,000 tiny moments of someone not showing up, not responding, not caring. And that kind of pain, it's hard to name, it's hard to explain, but it lingers. So let's name it now. If someone disappears on you when life gets hard, if they check out when you need them to check in, that is a betrayal. It may not look like traditional betrayal, but it is a rupture in the very fabric of connection. And the healing begins the moment we stop making excuses for it. Yes, people have limitations. Yes, people get overwhelmed. But there's a difference between someone who's doing their best and stumbling and someone who consistently refuses to sit with your pain because it makes them uncomfortable. One is human, the other is harmful. You are allowed to need support. You are allowed to ask for presence. You are allowed to say, I needed you and you weren't there. And if that person minimizes, denies, or turns it back on you, you're also allowed to walk away. Because true connection isn't tested when everything is fine. It's revealed in crisis. It's forged in fire. It shows up when things fall apart. Love doesn't always have the right words. It doesn't always know exactly what to do. But love stays. Love sits with you in the dark. Love doesn't vanish when it's inconvenient. So if someone left you in the dark and told you it was your fault for not lighting your own way, please hear this. It wasn't your fault. Your pain was never too much. Your heart was never asking for too much. They just weren't capable of giving what you deserve. And that's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their limitations. Let them keep their silence. You keep your light. You deserve relationships that stay. Some betrayals happen quietly, others happen in the spotlight. And the ones that happen publicly, those are the wounds that don't just hurt. They sting, they echo, they humiliate. Betrayal by public humiliation or exposure is when someone takes your private pain, your vulnerable truth, or your sacred story and weaponizes it. They might do it in a room full of strangers, in a heated argument, in a group chat, or with a flippant joke at your expense. They might dress it up as just being honest or just messing around. But make no mistake, this isn't banter. This isn't conflict. This is betrayal in its most exposed form. And it is deeply violating because at some point you trusted this person, you shared something raw with them, maybe a fear, a trauma, a past regret, or an insecurity you barely spoke aloud to yourself. And instead of honoring that sacred act of sharing, they turned it into a tool, a punchline, a spotlight, a power move. And suddenly what was once just between the two of you is now out there, out in the open, in front of people who were never meant to know. Your pain becomes public property. Your shame is put on display. That's not just cruel. That's dehumanizing. And here's what makes it even more painful. You start to question yourself. You wonder if you're being too sensitive. You tell yourself, maybe they didn't mean it that way. Maybe they were just mad, just joking. Maybe you were the problem for reacting at all. But let me say this as clearly as possible. If someone laughs at your pain, mocks your struggle, or exposes your vulnerability to others without your consent, that is abuse of emotional intimacy, full stop. Because there is a contract, spoken or unspoken, in every healthy relationship, and it goes like this. What you tell me in trust, I will protect. What you show me in vulnerability, I will honor. What we go through in private, I will not turn into a performance. And someone breaks that contract, they aren't just being too honest or bad at boundaries, they're violating your dignity. Sometimes it looks like mocking your mental health struggles in front of friends. Sometimes it's a partner sharing your secrets to win an argument. Sometimes it's airing your personal business online where 100 strangers can weigh in. And sometimes it's more subtle, like someone rolling their eyes and making sarcastic comments when you open up about something that matters to you. And here's the worst part. This kind of betrayal doesn't always end when the moment passes. Long after the crowd goes quiet, long after the laughter dies down or the argument ends, you are left holding the shame, the exposure, the humiliation. You carry the fallout alone. That's not just unkind, that's unsafe. Healthy relationships, romantic, platonic, or familial, should be your safe house, not your stage. The people who love you should protect your reputation, not profit from your pain. And if someone repeatedly throws you under the bus for attention, approval, or control, they are not your people. You are not dramatic for wanting to keep your private life private. You are not fragile for expecting someone to protect your dignity. And you are not wrong for walking away from someone who made your wounds public and called it truth. You are allowed to draw a line that says, I will never let you speak for me again. You are allowed to rise not with vengeance, but with boundaries. Not with rage, but with refusal. Refusal to let anyone else define your worth in public spaces again, because from now on, your story belongs to you, and only those who can hold it with reverence deserve access to it. Would you like this compiled into a full, flowing talk now, or are you planning to break it into segments? Forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing. They are not a package deal. They are not two sides of the same coin. One is something you do within yourself. The other requires mutual effort, mutual respect, and mutual responsibility. Forgiveness is internal. It's about you. Reconciliation is relational. It's about us. And far too often, people confuse the two. They believe that if you've forgiven someone, then you must also go back to how things were before. That if you truly let go of the pain, you should also let that person back into your life, your space, your heart. But that's the belief. It's dangerous because it pressures people, especially those who've been deeply hurt, to reopen doors they had every right to close. It suggests that your healing isn't valid unless you've made peace with the person who harmed you. That the higher road always involves reunion. Let me be very clear. You can forgive someone without ever speaking to them again. You can release the anger, the bitterness, the resentment, and still keep them blocked, distant, or permanently removed from your life. You can let go of the pain without pretending it didn't happen. Forgiveness is a decision to stop carrying what they did, not to pretend they never did it. And reconciliation, that's a whole different process. One that requires earned trust, one that requires real change, one that begins with accountability, not excuses, not performative apologies, not demands for instant redemption, but accountability. If someone is pushing you to reconcile without acknowledging the harm they caused, they're not seeking reconnection. They're seeking comfort. They want relief from guilt, not repair of the relationship. And that's not fair to you because you're the one who had to do the healing. You're the one who carried the scar. You're the one who had to rebuild your sense of safety, piece by piece. So let's stop glamorizing the idea that real forgiveness means welcoming them back. Sometimes real forgiveness means telling the truth about what happened and still choosing peace for yourself. Sometimes real forgiveness is walking away without bitterness, but also without a backwards glance. And look, this doesn't mean you have to be hard-hearted. You can have compassion for someone and still recognize they are not healthy for your life. You can wish someone healing and still keep your distance. You can hope someone grows and still say, just not in my space. That isn't cruelty, that's discernment. That's boundary, that's maturity. That's the wisdom that comes from being hurt but not broken. And here's the part no one tells you. Sometimes reconciliation actually delays healing because you spend so much time trying to smooth things over, trying to make it work, trying to be the bigger person, that you lose track of your own needs, your own story, your own truth. But real healing happens when you stop managing their emotions and start honoring your own. When you stop waiting for the apology that never came and start giving yourself the closure you needed. When you realize that choosing not to reconcile is not a failure of love, it's a celebration of self-respect. So if you're walking away from someone you've forgiven, don't let anyone tell you you're being cold or heartless. You're doing the bravest thing there is, choosing yourself without hate and choosing peace without pretending. Forgiveness is freedom Reconciliation is a choice. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do for them and for you is to keep walking in different direction. We like to think that time heals everything, that if we just stay busy, stay strong, stay positive, we'll eventually move past the pain. But what we often forget or avoid is this: you cannot heal what you won't name. You cannot mend what you pretend didn't break. You cannot transform pain while you're still minimizing it. Healing isn't polite. It doesn't wear a smiley face or whisper, let it go. Healing is messy, it's raw, it's disruptive, and it always begins the same way, by facing what actually happened and calling it what it was, not what it should have been, not what they said it was, not what makes everyone else comfortable, but the real thing. Maybe that means admitting that what you went through was emotional abuse, even if they never raised a hand. Maybe it means acknowledging that your childhood wasn't just strict, it was neglectful. Maybe it means finally saying out loud that the betrayal you experienced wasn't just a mistake, it was a deep, repeated violation of trust. And yes, it's uncomfortable. There's grief in that honesty, because once you name the harm, you can't unknow it. You can't go back to pretending that the relationship was not that bad. You can't rewrite this story to make it easier to carry. But here's the truth. You are not dishonoring anyone by telling the truth about how they hurt you. You're not cruel for using the correct words. You're not dramatic for naming the damage. You're not disloyal for refusing to protect the reputation of someone who didn't protect your heart. There is no growth in denial. There is no peace in suppression. There is no healing in half-truths. And sometimes people around you won't want you to name the harm, because when you name it, they have to confront it. They have to look at what they enabled, excused, or ignored, and that can make people deeply uncomfortable. That you weren't put on this earth to keep other people comfortable. You were born to live whole, to live free, to live truthfully. And wholeness begins with honesty. Naming the harm is not about staying in a place of victimhood. It's about reclaiming power. It's about saying, this happened, it mattered, it changed me, and now I get to choose what happens next. Because when you don't name it, the pain festers. It shows up in your body, your relationships, your beliefs. It convinces you that your boundaries are too rigid, that your standards are too high, that your intuition can't be trusted. And when you finally name it clearly, honestly, unapologetically, you begin to release it. You start to realize you were not too sensitive. You were not imagining it. You were not to blame for being mistreated. And in that clarity, healing begins. You start to breathe easier. You start to show up for yourself differently. You start to attract relationships that don't ask you to shrink or lie or numb yourself just to be loved. So if you're still holding your pain in silence, let this be your permission slip. Name it, speak it, write it, honor it. You do not owe anyone your silence. Because the truth may shake things at first, but it also sets you free, and you are allowed to be free. We are taught to work for love, to prove our worth, to be chosen, to be easy, low mental understanding to a fault. We are taught that if someone stays, even if they're inattentive, dismissive, or cruel, that's better than being alone. But I want you to hear this clearly, maybe for the first time. You deserve relationships rooted in mutual regard, not tolerance, not obligation, not performance. Regard, that quiet, steady recognition of your humanity, that gentle respect that says, I see you as a whole person. I don't just love what you give, I value who you are. Mutual regard means we don't play power games. We don't keep score. We don't treat one person's needs as more important than the others. We don't ask one person to bend until they break so the other can stay comfortable. Relationships rooted in mutual regard are not perfect, but they are safe, emotionally safe, spiritually safe, safe enough for both people to bring their full selves to the table, messy parts, soft parts, sacred parts, and know they won't be weaponized or discarded. In relationships like these, you don't have to prove your worth through endless emotional labor. Apologize for your sensitivity, your ambition, or your healing process. Shrink your voice to avoid rocking the boat. Translate your pain into palatable pieces so the other person doesn't feel attacked. No. In relationships rooted in mutual regard, you are met, you are heard, you are held. Because here's what regard looks like in practice. When you speak your truth, they lean in, not away. When you express a boundary, they don't punish you, they respect you. When you're struggling, they don't disappear, they stay close. When you grow, they celebrate, not compete or criticize. Mutual regard is what holds relationships upright when romance fades and circumstances shift. It's what turns chemistry into connection, conflict into repair. It's what lets us say, I choose you, not because I need to, but because I see your worth and you see mine. And yet, so many of us settle for less. We accept crumbs because we've been conditioned to believe that wholeness is too much. We tolerate being overlooked because we were taught that love must be earned. We ignore red flags because we confuse intensity with intimacy. But here's the truth. You were not born to convince people to treat you well. You were not put on this planet to be someone's emotional landfill or ego boost. You are not hard to love. You are just asking to be loved with regard. And if that's too much for someone, it's not a sign that you're too much. It's a sign that they are not ready to meet you in this space of real mutual connection. Love is not enough if it comes without respect. Loyalty means nothing if it costs you your self-worth. Commitment is not sacred if it asks you to stay small. You are allowed to require more, not in a way that's demanding or rigid, but in a way that honors your own soul. So, if someone cannot meet you with regard, if they constantly belittle, invalidate, ignore, or devalue what you bring, that is not a relationship. That is a power imbalance. That is a cycle of self-abandonment dressed up as devotion. And you don't need to keep proving you're worthy of more. You already are. From this moment forward, I hope you remember, you deserve a love that mirrors back your worth, not magnifies your wounds. You deserve friendships that expand you, not extract from you. You deserve partnerships where presence is given freely, not negotiated like currency. You deserve relationships where your dignity is never the cost of connection, because mutual regard, that's not a bonus. That's the baseline. We've walked through the betrayals we should never excuse, the ones that fracture trust at the core. We've named the harm. We've told the truth, and we've unhooked forgiveness from reconciliation because they are not the same. We've looked closely at what safety, dignity, and regard actually look like in real, grown-up, soul-deep relationships. And now I want to leave you with this. You are allowed to stop pretending. You are allowed to stop minimizing your pain to protect other people's comfort. You are allowed to name what hurt you, not to stay in the wound, but to finally begin the healing. There is nothing noble about carrying the weight of someone else's betrayal in silence. There is nothing mature about pretending everything is fine when your heart is breaking. And there is nothing enlightened about calling dysfunction love just to feel less alone. You deserve peace. You deserve truth. You deserve relationships that don't require your erasure to survive. And if that means letting go of what once felt familiar, so be it. If that means walking alone for a season while you rebuild your standards, walk with your head high. If that means disappointing people who benefited from your silence, let them be disappointed. Because your healing is not up for negotiation. Your dignity is not a footnote. Your heart is not a tool for someone else's convenience. You are worthy of relationships that don't just say they love you, but show it. In the quiet moments, in the hard conversations, in the sacred way they treat your soul with care. So go forward not with bitterness, but with clarity, not with fear, but with discernment. And not with the need to be nice, but with the audacity to be whole. You are not here to beg for love. You are here to become it, to embody it, to receive it fully and freely from people who know how to hold your heart with reverence. And those are the only relationships worth keeping.